Welcome to This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast, episode 4, a forum for sports, politics, social issues, and even a little religion. We'll take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. What is on the menu for this week?
Act 1 mission statement.
One of the listeners of the podcast reached out to me and provided some feedback on the podcast so far. She said, I enjoyed the podcast so far, but I don't truly understand the title and how it ties to the content. I'm sure your first reaction is, oh, so that's one of the 12 people that you know that you sent the podcast to and that listened to it. Yeah, that's right. What of it? I think it appropriate then to discuss how I came up with the title and how it relates to the content, not only of the current episodes, but how it will shape the content of future episodes. Over the course of time that I've existed during all of my trials and tribulations, I've grown increasingly more fascinated with the way people react to the circumstances that they find themselves in. Things that they like, things that they dislike. People that they like, people that they dislike. Things they enjoy that make them happy, things that they don't enjoy and that make them upset. The bottom line is that we all want to be the best version of ourselves. When identifying with the things that we like, the things that we enjoy, the people that we gravitate to, all of this is really a reflection of ourselves. We gravitate to the things that we aspire to be. We disown the things that we do not like. No matter what you believe, one thing that we cannot deny is that social media has laid much of this bare. We know better now what people truly like, what they truly dislike, the people that they identify with, the people that they root for. They readily, voluntarily give this information out, publish it to anyone and everyone. Although we all want to be the best versions of ourselves, we routinely fall short and we have to examine why. Instead of looking internally for that why, many people look externally. It's a natural part of the human condition to do so. What do people come up with then when they look externally? They come up with theories of the deep state, the aliens, the Illuminati, the them, right? Whatever manifestation you're buying, it's the quote-unquote them. Them is holding me back. Them is negatively influencing me personally, me professionally, my community, my state, my country. Them is hurting America. As I wade through this dumbass nonsense, it dawned on me that these people are my peers. No, I wouldn't socialize with them. We aren't necessarily part of any religious group, any social group, any political group. But in a very real way, these are my peers. That very real way is at the polls. That's right. These are your peers at the polls. The government, during a 100-year pandemic, cannot appropriately address a vaccine, cannot appropriately address the mass unemployment. It shows itself to be everything that we believed it was. Bloated, inefficient, bureaucratic, self-preserving. If you ask John Q. Citizen, Jane Q. Citizen, how they feel about the government, it's pure condemnation. Incompetent boobs. Feckless dunderpates. Give them an audience. Let them go. Have them get it all out of their system. Casually change the topic to the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers on September 11th. 2 out of 5? 3 out of 7? Will tell you that it was an inside job and that the government of the United States was involved. The cognitive dissonance slaps me in the face. What kind of dumbass nonsense is that? Ask John Q. Citizen or Jane Q. Citizen about public services, schools, fire departments, police departments. We need better public services. Ask John Q. Citizen or Jane Q. Citizen about the public referendum on the new stadium for the sports franchise, and they'll tell you, oh, we have to pass it. We need to build a new stadium so that the franchise won't leave the city. Cognitive dissonance. You want better schools. You want better roads. You want better public services. Let's take that money that we have in the public coffers and let's spend it on a stadium for a billionaire that's going to tie down the finances of this municipality for the next 20 years. What kind of dumbass nonsense is that? This, ladies and gentlemen, is why I don't vote. The guy who got abducted by the alien, yeah, he's a jackass. That jackass has a date of birth, that jackass has a social security number, and that jackass is going to cast a ballot right next to you at the polls. He is your equal. He is your peer. And he has simply negated your vote. Now, do I actually vote? Of course I do. I'm a drone just like you. Slave to habit, slave to ritual. I watch the television commercials, I read the articles. I go to the polls in a state of self-loathing, debating on whether or not to vote for Narcissist A or Narcissist B. Self-serving, bad political candidates. Candidates that truly I don't have anything in common with. People that I know really don't represent me. They don't represent my political beliefs, my social beliefs, my religious beliefs, my fiscal beliefs. I'm in that booth choosing between the lesser of what I believe are two evils. That puts me right there with you, correct? We're all in the same boat. Or are we? Given the popularity of social media, my fear is now that I'm not with you. This is why I don't vote is my forum. It is my echo chamber for the free thinker, for those who want to challenge conventional thinking, for those that don't walk in to a voting booth and look at whether or not someone is an R or a D and cast their vote accordingly. This is why I don't vote is my forum to challenge those that think that this country is coming to an end, that this planet is coming to an end. These popular culture dildos have dominated the public consciousness too long. Empty calories. It's a sugar rush for your mind and your soul. And I know what you're thinking, dear listener. Okay, now I better understand the title of your show, the mission statement of the program, your purpose for starting a podcast. But did you really have to blurt all of that out at a child's baptism or at a coworker's wedding reception? No, of course not. But I have a low social IQ. I didn't have a forum for these thoughts until now. There is this great part in the movie Men in Black, which succinctly helps illustrate my point. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones are sitting on a park bench in Manhattan. Tommy Lee Jones is explaining to Will Smith that alien life does in fact exist and that there are many aliens residing in the city of Manhattan. Will Smith says, "Why the secrecy? People are smart. They can handle it." What is Tommy Lee Jones's response? A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. Too many elements in our society today are preying on the fact that people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals. And I'm going to call it out. This is why I don't vote. A podcast.
Act 2 Sports.
Although I've been honest with you, dear listener, about the state of futility that is my fandom, I have held back discussing one team, given the utter disgust that I feel for the manager and probably moreover the owner. That team is Newcastle United. The league, the English Premier League. The sport, soccer. Soy beta cuck boy like soccer. F*** you. F*** you. To be clear, dear listener, there is no more emasculating event that a man can go through in 21st century America than sitting through an entire NFL game. Think about it. Think about it. You sit there for 4 hours and you get maybe 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes of content, of actual content. The NFL consumer is a cuck. The NFL consumer is an advertising cuck. The NFL is no more than your bull, and the advertising is your ball gag and your 10-inch black dildo, and you've got every orifice being filled at any given opportunity. Either team scores, kicks a field goal, scores a touchdown. Cut away to ad, come back, kickoff, cut away to ad. Injury on the field, cut away to ad. Timeout taken, cut away to ad. Any opportunity, cut away to ad. The bull NFL has got you gagging, crying out, "Please, Daddy, please, let me see the third down conversion attempt." You want to see it, cuck? Take another insurance ad. Until you memorize the features of the crew cab of the Ford F-150, you ain't getting shit. And what does the NFL fan do? He takes. He takes and takes and takes. One of the reasons why I started following the Premier League in the first place is the fact that there are no ads. And although the British passionately follow their clubs, their broadcasts don't have all the creamy gushiness that we have in the United States. A legitimate criticism of the broadcast of Premier League soccer in the United States is that they had to incorporate into an American broadcast cream-filled gushiness. If you've been watching the Premier League long enough, you remember when the broadcast started, they announced the lineups for each squad, and then they kicked the ball and started playing. The advertising incursions were limited to billboards along the outside of the field and the occasional flash next to the score of an advertiser. Interest maintained, masculinity intact. In sum, take your cuck beta soy bullshit and shove it up your ass. Based on your consumption of NFL games, I know you have room. Oh, and since we're on a tangent, let's go on another tangent. How stupid is the American consumer in its securing of an insurance policy? Watch any sporting event, and the litany of insurance ads is nauseating. First, let's burst the bubble of all of these insurance ads. You aren't saving any money. If you take the same exact coverage in a policy and look at it across insurers, generally it's going to be within 10% of the cost of the other insurers. What you're hearing now is new code words on how insurers are trying to lure you into coming to them to quote-unquote save money, such as only pay for what you need. The fact of the matter is, for years, insurance companies tried to lure new consumers by offering discount policies, which is an insurance company phrase for not offering you dick in coverage. For all intents and purposes, all you're getting with these discount policies is a piece of paper, a proof of insurance card, because the policy doesn't cover a goddamn thing. But let's take it to the second iteration, the next level. Let's say that you can save money by going from insurer A to insurer B. Let's say you can save hundreds. And that hundreds ends up being, let's say, $250 by going from policy A to policy B. The insurance company sells you on a savings of $250 as if you're going to be able to buy a new car. You're going to be able to buy a new house. That this sum of money is indispensable to you. Well, as anyone who's been buying insurance, paying for insurance over the course of years understands, the insurance policy is a 6-month policy. Generally, the policy that you get is going to be renewed every 6 months. So your potential savings is $250 over the course of 6 months. A whopping $42 a month. I'm not buying into any of this progressive liberal bullshit about how tight people's budgets are and how much $42 actually means to any given person or any given household. You can save more money by cutting out Starbucks a month than you can by switching insurance policies. Are people going to limit their Starbucks consumption? No. Are they going to think that they can then reduce their overall monthly expenses by switching car insurance? Of course. Because that's what the advertisements tell them. That's what the ads say you can do. Maintain all your lazy consumption habits and save money with this boring, bland necessity required by the state. I ask you this, dear listener. If the insurance companies are saving you so much money, how is it that they can afford to spend billions of dollars on advertisements? First, they're not saving you that much money. And second, in the event that you are saving money, it's because you bought a discount policy and the insurer's never going to pay out. You were paying $600, $800, $1,000, $1,200 every 6 months for a piece of paper called a proof of insurance card. Okay, tirade over. Tangent satisfied. On to Newcastle United. For the ignorant, in the Premier League and in most professional football leagues around the world, of course we call it soccer, they call it football, but in these leagues, there is the concept of relegation. This concept is, in many ways, an American concept. In America, we are preached to about being able to start from anywhere and rise to the top, to achieve, to ascend. There are no limits in America. Well, the fact of the matter is, particular to sports, there are great limits in America. And all of those limits are created so that people can't simply rise from nothing and ascend to the top. All of these limits are created for the benefit of the league and its limited number of owners. That is not the way soccer leagues or football leagues operate around the world. There aren't salary caps, and there aren't limits as to who can participate in the league. Most every city has a soccer club. Any of these clubs can ascend to the top league in their nation. All they have to do is win. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, winning means money. So in order to win, and in order to reach that top flight league, and in order to stay in that league, you've got to have and spend money. First thing you're going to spend money on is players. Second thing you're going to spend money on is the manager and the management team. And the third thing you're going to spend money on is your facilities. The grounds, as they like to call it in England. If you have the money and you're willing to spend it, any team can begin to rise through the ranks in an aspiration to make it to the top league. But if a team slips, if a team fails to spend that money. If a team fails to maintain its grounds, if a team fails to have the right coaching staff, the proper manager, that team will lose, and that team can get relegated and can continue to get relegated down throughout the leagues. Case in point for the wise, Sunderland. This background is all relevant to Newcastle United. The current owner, Mike Ashley, bought the club in 2007. The club was highly leveraged in debt. Mike Ashley had made millions of dollars in a company called Sports Direct, which I would compare to a Dick's Sporting Goods in the United States. So who is Mike Ashley? If I had to compare him to owners of North American sports franchises, it would be difficult to do so. He has the pomposity of Dan Snyder, owner of the Washington Professional Football Team. Washington Professional Football Team. That's the name now. Ashley has the incompetence of a James Dolan, owner of the New York Knickerbockers. But most frustrating for a Newcastle fan, Ashley has the attitude of the Ford family, owner of the Detroit Lions, or of Robert Sarver, owner of the Phoenix Suns. He just doesn't really care about winning. Dan Snyder, pompous ass. No one could argue that. But does he want to win? Yes. James Dolan, slow-witted dunderpate. Would anyone argue this? No. But does he want to win? Yes. The Ford family, Robert Sarver, do they by their actions appear to want to win? No. On its face, the actions taken by the Detroit Lions, by the Phoenix Suns, never appear to be for the betterment of the team. They are public relations moves in order to keep the fan base interested in the product, interested enough to continue to spend their money. Winning, losing, it's an ancillary point. If the people continue to spend their money, the Ford family will be satisfied. Robert Sarver will be satisfied. That is Mike Ashley. He sees Newcastle United as one thing and one thing only, a business asset. So the club quickly got out of debt. But as the club got out of debt, and in fact began turning profits, it became clear that those profits were profits for the owner. They were not profits for the club. No money was going to be reinvested in the club. Nothing illustrated this fact more than the buying and selling of players. Now let me quickly go over this for the ignorant. Remember, you've been brought up in the United States to believe this is a capitalistic country, market principles govern. You get older, you realize that's all bullshit. How is it bullshit specific to sports? Well, the sports leagues essentially have a monopoly. They have antitrust exemptions from the federal government. They have a monopoly. Therefore, they're able to set prices and control production. The owners can create salary caps. Certainly, labor can organize and object to as much, but based on the confines of the way the rules are set up, the restrictions, the regulations, labor has only so much leverage. Free market principles do not apply. It is a closed or controlled market. Now let's look at soccer, a sport that's played throughout the world. Because leagues themselves are competing with other like leagues, they have little ability to create salary caps. They would be inhibiting their own ability to compete in a world market, in a capitalist market. Club from League A in country X can sell a player to Club B in country Y to impose restrictions on yourself, on your own league, in order to try to hold down salaries for the players would simply mean that you wouldn't get any players. You would exclude from your league all of the best players, and therefore all of the best talent would go elsewhere, and eyes would go elsewhere. Consumers would go elsewhere. It's the beauty of capitalism. You want to make more money? You want to generate more revenue? You're going to have to compete by way of salaries for the best players in the world in order to produce the best product. But Mike Ashley has an ingenious take on this concept. You see, Ashley, once he bought the club, began going out and getting prospect players. If the player showed any sign of promise in the Premier League, that player was immediately marketed for sale. Newcastle fans could actually abide by this approach because the club was so far in debt. Two problems emerged. First, this approach was not an anomaly. Newcastle fans realized very quickly that it was the standard. Second, as I alluded to earlier, if you don't spend the money, if you can't stay competitive, you will get relegated. You will be sent down to the lower league, where not only is the level of play lower, but more importantly, the money is significantly lower. The television revenues are significantly lower. Mike Ashley, over money, has been willing to risk the relegation of Newcastle United during his 13-year tenure. But something interesting happened during the course of those 13 years. Yes, as I alluded to earlier, it's all going to come back. It's all going to come full circle. NBC started televising the Premier League in the United States. When NBC started televising the Premier League in the United States, it had the same viewership as bowling and NBC Autosports, namely Grand Prix. Within a decade, it's the most valuable NBC sports property. So valuable that NBC can't alone compete for the entire broadcasting rights. What does this mean? It means that there's a hell of a lot more money for each Premier League club at the end of each season by way of the television revenues. So it's in each club's best interest, in each club's best financial interest, to stay in the Premier League. Even if all you're concerned with is money, you want to stay in the league. You can be the last position in the league, but you're in the league. You're entitled to some of that television money. Now you got to get yourself a manager to keep you in that league. As we've discussed, Mike Ashley has the pomposity of a Dan Snyder, the incompetence of a James Dolan, and the attitude of the Ford family or of a Robert Sarver. The man is a known quantity. He's burned bridges with every moderate to capable manager that he's ever hired. What's he left with? Buffoons. Only a buffoon would take the Newcastle job. No one with any options would take the job. The job is one where only a buffoon would be considered and would take it. Why? Because a buffoon isn't going to get any other opportunity to manage in the Premier League. And no one who rises above the level of a buffoon is going to consider going to Newcastle. Buffoonery it is. And this buffoonery actually has a name. It was given a proper title. That title is Steve Bruce. Under the watchful eye of a Mike Ashley and the absolute buffoonery of a Steve Bruce, Newcastle United is prepared to get relegated for the fourth time in 13 years. In the U.S., we always say you've got to beat the teams that you can beat, which is a nice way of saying when you suck, you've got to beat up all the other teams that suck. You've got to at least be able to beat them. Newcastle find a way to lose to not just bad teams, not just the worst teams in the Premier League, but potentially the worst teams that have ever been in the Premier League. Newcastle lost a game this season to a team that had not yet won a contest 20 games into the Premier League season and had not kept a clean sheet that entire time by the score of 1-0, thereby giving the team not only its first victory, but its first clean sheet, its first shutout. How did I land on this? How did I land on this shit team? Is this how karma works? Is this how justice actually works in the real world? Am I being punished for something that I did when I was 12 years old? Am I being punished for something that I did when I was 22 years old? When I was doing considerably more bad things? I don't know. I do know that if Newcastle gets relegated again after this season, they will not be coming back up anytime soon. Under the stewardship of Mike Ashley, they may very well turn into the next Sunderland. For someone who's actually divorced a team, it may be what I need in order to move on. Dear Newcastle, will you be my international Detroit Lions? Only time will tell.
Act 3 Outrage Porn Alert.
Outrage porn alert. Outrage porn alert. In a city where you do not live, in a public library you've never been to, Dr. Seuss books are no longer available. Outrage porn alert. Outrage porn alert. Although you have not been to a public library in 25 years, although you have not read nor bought Dr. Seuss books for your children, immediately proceed to the nearest vendor and purchase as many Dr. Seuss books as you can. Outrage porn alert. Outrage porn alert. Place those Dr. Seuss books on a shelf. Have them lie dormant for the rest of your life. Outrage porn alert. Outrage porn alert. Follow. 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 Obey. 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 This is why I don't vote. A podcast.